with you in the Midlands, BBC Radio.
Well, our very special guest tonight on the Record Collectors, and I know this will mean an awful lot to our many instrumental fans, is the legend, I can say that and mean it, Duane Eddy. Well, welcome to Britain, Duane.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here.
And we're delighted to have you on the Collectors programme.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Can we talk about, you were born in, was it New York City State?
No, New York State.
New York.
Corning, New York. That's up about 200 miles from New York City, up in the country.
And your early recording career, do you have connections with Sanford Clark?
No, I knew him in Phoenix, and I played on a couple of his records.
Yeah, that's what I was meaning, yes. What was your first recording session? Can you remember that?
No, not really. I think I played rhythm on a couple of local sessions in Phoenix. And the first time I recorded was in 1957. We cut Ramrod. And,
right.
But we couldn't get anybody to put it out, so we put it back in the can and left it there, and went ahead and later on that same year cut Movin' and Groovin', which we placed with Jamie Records, and they put it out and they got a bit of the ways up the chart.
Ramrod, wasn't there an occasion on an American TV show where you performed Ramrod live?
That's true.
And then you brought back the old recordings and dubbed over it with the saxophonist and so forth later. And then it wasn't going to be the single, but you decided to issue it as a single. Is that correct?
Well, what happened? We did it live on a Dick Clark Saturday night show, and I was on there doing Rebel Rouser, which was a hit at the time. And that was on Saturday night. Monday morning, they had orders for 150,000 records, so they panicked and said, "We've got to have that record," you know. So Lee Hazelwood, the producer, overdubbed Plas Johnson on sax, and the Sharps, who later became the Rivingtons, on the yells and hand claps, and took it to the pressing plant Tuesday night, and Wednesday they started pressing, and Thursday and shipping, and by Friday it was in the stores, and it was my second fairly big hit.
Can I ask how you got to Jamie Records? Because if at the time you were basically around Phoenix, it's a long way to Philadelphia, isn't it?
Not by telephone. No, Lester Sill who was Lee Hazelwood's partner, knew the Harold Lipsius, who owned Jamie Records, and rang him up and asked him if he'd be interested, and sent him a copy of the Movin' and Groovin', and he was, and they thought they'd try it. They put it out, and they got up, I guess, into the 70s.
If I ask you a little bit about Jamie Records, besides your own recording, did you have much to do with any of the groups actually signed to Jamie, or did you basically record elsewhere and the masters sent up to Philadelphia?
No, I don't know anything else about any of the other people they had, or if they had any. I did play on one record, Ray Sharp's Linda Lou.
Yes.
Yeah, that was on Jamie.
Yeah. Can I ask you about a record I have in my hand, which is Caravan, and it says Duane Eddy, but a lot of people say that isn't really you.
No, it's not really me. That's Al Casey.
Can I ask the story behind how it's come out with your name then, if it's Al Casey?
Yeah, it is Al Casey, and the reason his name is on it because it was his record, and my name's on it, isn't it? But the reason that the story behind that is that Lee and Les decided they wanted to quit producing me along about 1959-60, somewhere in there, and they wanted more money from Jamie and so forth, so they went on strike, quit producing me, and they wanted me to strike with them, but I couldn't. I just resigned and had a new contract, so they went on strike and left me to it by myself, and I went on and produced we had Peppy and Dixie and a few things like that, so they just realized they'd gambled and lost, and so they put this out with my name on it, and my manager said, well, he said, if it does something, we'll sue. If it doesn't, what's the difference?
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter.
It would be nice if it did something. You could have claimed some royalties on it.
Well, I'd have given them to Al because it was really his record.
Can I ask from those very early days, a lot of your stuff has come out over here in Britain and obviously in the States. Is there anything that you can recall cutting that you thought, that was a cracking tune, that's never been released and is still in the can?
Oh, I suppose there's several of those. There's a whole album on Colpix that never was released. And it's got a few good songs in it.
Yeah. Can you think of any titles?
Yeah, Hard Times, we redid that. Let's see. I don't remember exactly names of things that were in there.
Nothing on Jamie?
Oh, no. No, Jamie, all Jamie ever got was exactly what you've heard, what's been put out. They never had anything extra.
On Have Twangy Guitar Will Travel album, which is a very collectible album, even more collectible in Canada on the Quality label. It was issued on Quality in Canada, I gather, because it contained some different tracks on it, on the Quality album in Canada. Do you know? You're probably aware of that.
I've got one of those. It's got a track of Neil Sedaka, I think, and
it's got Dixie 1 and 2 on it, hasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Yeah,
I don't. That's could have been Al Casey again. I don't know, or it could have been another kid in Phoenix named Don Cole.
On the first album, Have Twangy Guitar Will Travel, am I right in saying historically that's probably the first stereo rock and roll album?
I've heard that. I think it is. I don't know of anybody else that was doing it at the time. We were state of the art there.
How did that come about? Because I mean, in that period, certainly in the middle 50s to late 50s, stereo for rock artists was, anyway, was pretty rare. I mean, how did you decide? Why did you decide to? Was it your own Ampex machine?
No, it was Jack Miller's Ampex machine. It was a 4-track he had, and I guess Floyd Ramsey, the guy that owned the studio there, decided he wanted to be state-of-the-art and up-to-date, and he'd heard about stereo. So when I came off the road to do the first album, they had it all set up. They did it while I was gone, after I'd cut Rebel Rouser.
Now, I haven't got in front of me the list of your releases in the United Kingdom, but to my memory, that album was only issued in mono in Britain originally. Was it ever issued in stereo in the United States?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I have
so
several.
Guitar Will Travel is
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Because it was recorded in stereo.
Oh, yes, and there were stereo and mono releases simultaneously. I mean, in those days a lot of people didn't have stereo players, but so they didn't probably press as many stereo as they did mono. But also a lot of people like Lee Hazelwood didn't like stereo. We experimented with it and everything, but he didn't think it had the impact that mono did, and he was right. Especially on AM radio, you couldn't play it.
Moving to the Grooving was the Lee Hazelwood composition.
No, it was mine and Lee's.
You and Lee and yourself together, right? And how many records did you cut write in conjunction with Lee?
Oh, I don't know. Most of the good part of the hits, yeah.
We're acquainted, obviously, with your career, Duane Eddy, but there's more just to the Duane Eddy sound than yourself. There's obviously your backing group. Can you tell us a little about your backing group? I know you mentioned on some of the things you had the Rebel Yells from the Rivingtons and people like that, but who made up your actual group in the early days, and where did you get them from?
They were all local musicians in Phoenix, mostly. If we needed a sax, we went to L.A.
Yeah.
We didn't have a rock and roll sax player that had that particular tone at the time until I got my first hit and started on the road. We got Steve Douglas, and then he did the records for a while, and then Jim Horn came along and did them. And they both went on to become top session players and so forth, as I'm sure you're aware of. The rest of the guys are all local guys that worked in clubs around Phoenix. Buddy Wheeler, Donnie Owens, Jimmy Simmons, played the upright slant bass. Let's see, Al Casey. At the time, his wife Corky, who was probably the first female rock and roll session player in the history of rock and roll that I know of.
Where then did you get the Rebelettes later on? Because for a long time you were instrumental, and then suddenly we had Dance with the Guitar Man with the Rebelettes. Were they just local singers or just session people?
No, that was Darlene Love and the Blossoms.
Did you get those through Lester Sill? Because Lester Sill went on with Phil Spector, didn't he, to form Phillies?
Yeah.
Is that how you got them on recording then? How did you get them?
No, we took the records to the track Dance with a Guitar Man to L.A. and they were working background. They were background singers, and we just hired them to sing that.
A session, effectively.
Yeah.
Can we just pick a track from your, perhaps the Jamie period, your early period, 57, 58, to play to our listener now? Can you choose one for us, Duane?
Well, I'd have to choose the first big one, Rebel Rouser.
And here's Rebel Rouser. That was Rebel Rouser from Duane Eddy, who's our special guest tonight on the Record Collectors. Catching him on his UK tour, very welcome return to Britain. Are you going off to Europe at all after the British bit? Is there a European section to this tour?
No, this is it. We just came over for a month here, and then I'll head back to Nashville after this.
I think the first record with the Blossoms, was it Boss Guitar? Or was it Boss Guitar? Dance with Guitar Man, and following that was Boss Guitar.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they were both good records for you, weren't they?
Yes, they were. Yeah, they did very well.
Have you any idea how many records you've sold totally?
Well, they say it's over 100 million. I'm not sure exactly how many over.
Where would your career go after Jamie then? If we looked in chronological order, I mean, we've briefly mentioned Colpix. I know you were on RCA Victor. You were also on Reprise, and I think I've also got a record in my collection called, I think, Love is a Warm Emotion or something, or Confusion, which is on a totally obscure little British label. Can you kind of account for our listener the labels that you've been on in sequence from Jamie onwards?
Well, starting from Jamie, I went to RCA in February of '62 and stayed there 3 years. And let me see, I'm not sure. I think after that was, I'm not sure if it was Colpix. Yeah, I think it was Colpix after that. And then did Reprise and Big Tree, Congress, which is a division of MCA. And he came back and did GTO records here. And then that Tony McCauley's label, that other obscure one you were talking about. Yeah, Target Records. Because he had a falling out with GTO, so went to Target. And let's see, I guess that's about it up until Capitol. A couple, 3 years ago. Well, before that, of course, was the Art of Noise record.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, you've been a producer as well. You worked with, what was it, Waylon Jennings doing a Buddy Holly medley. Did you produce some tracks for Waylon?
Yeah, I produced the medley and a couple other tracks that never were released, and I also produced Phil Everly's first solo album for RCA Victor. And I begged them to put out this one song. They wouldn't do it. And then this group here in England heard it and recorded it and sold 2 million copies. It was The Air That I Breathe, the Hollies.
Yeah, yes, marvellous. Do you know the other two tracks that weren't released? Can you recall what they were with Waylon?
Let's see, Lady in the Harbor, which he later recut on some other album, and a song that I'd shown him that I really liked. I can't think of the name of it. I don't remember now offhand.
How did you get involved with Art of Noise? Because in some way they, I won't say resurrected, I think that's the wrong word, but reawoke your kind of music to a whole new generation of people, and people who'd never heard Peter Gunn before were suddenly, what's this? And I know that with my family I was saying, yes, but I've got the original from years back, and they say, hey Dad, that's great. So how did all that come about?
That was a friend of mine here in England. Eddie Pumer was visiting with Derek Green, who runs China Records, and Derek was telling Eddie that he was going to put the Art of Noise with some singer or some group or something, and to create some attention for them. They've been doing well, but they hadn't broken through with a big hit yet. So he thought to get them attention, maybe since they were a bit avant-garde and off the wall and different and everything, that they needed some special attention. And then the conversation went on, and Eddie said, well, guess who I spoke with yesterday? Duane Eddy. And Derek jumped up and said, that's it, you know. But so they rang me up, and I had heard of the Art of Noise, but Eddie sent me a copy of some of their songs, and I thought, well, it's strange, but I think it might work.
Where was it recorded?
Here in England, at their studio. The Art
It did
of Noise.
well globally, didn't it, that record?
Yeah, it was top 10 all over the world, except the United States. It got in the top 50.
It would
But
be
they'd
nice
had
to have it in the top 10.
Well, it would have been, except that the label over there, Chrysalis, had lost all their promotion men just previous to the release of that record. And
it was a big shuffle like Chrysalis, wasn't it?
yeah, they'd had a big Payola scandal or something, and they'd lost their whole promotional network across the United States, so it only got promoted on the East Coast and the West Coast.
Let's just play the Art of Noise and Peter Gunn for our listener. And that was the Art of Noise, and of course Duane Eddy, Peter Gunn.
If I look at your one of your albums, which I have here, which is Twistin' and a Twanging. Now, I'm not very much of a guitarist. I don't know too much about them. Could you tell our listener kind of what the make of guitar is? Is the one that I can see over there in the corner of the dressing room the one that recorded all these big hits?
No, I used my Gretsch Chet Atkins on most of the hits in the studio in those days. And that black one there did Because They're Young, the Dan Electric. And the Guild I used on the Duane Eddy Guild that they made for me, I used on the road a lot. And took a few years for the Guild to get that exact sound, you know, and to sort of settle in and all that.
Did you choose that type of guitar then for the sound? Because I know very much in Britain, the revered, I think is the word, guitar is the Fender Stratocaster, isn't it? Which do you ever play any type of guitar like that, or do you always stick to these certain models?
I bought a Fender Stratocaster with a rosewood fingerboard in 1959, but ended up giving it to my son. I never used it, so.
I've got to say, looking at the guitar that beside me here, that cut Because They're Young, I have here the Sotheby's auctions, because Sotheby's rock auctions, and by golly, would that fetch a fortune if you was in that auction. They sell guitars at an auction in London.
Yeah.
And you've probably heard about that one. And they were sat between some really phenomenal guitars here.
Something we haven't asked you, and we've talked very much about your own career and guitars and that, is what artists, guitarists, maybe influenced you, or which artists do you admire most of all?
Oh, there were many when I started out. Hank Williams, of course, and a lot of country artists in those days. Tennessee Ernie, Louis Armstrong. I liked the way he played trumpet and left spaces and all that. That was a big influence. Guitar player-wise, it was Merle Travis, Joe Mathis, Chet Atkins.
So really, your influences are country, apart from, say, Louis Armstrong. Is there anyone else today, maybe in, shall we term it, the pop world, that you have a lot of respect for and admire?
Oh, many people. There are too many to name. I mean, there's just everybody that picks up a guitar, you know, it's like fingerprints. They all have their own individual approach, and I find it quite amazing that the same instrument with the same 6 strings can be used and played and enjoyed so many different ways.
Well, really, the guitar is the sound of rock and roll, and you are the sound of the guitar. It's been a pleasure having you on the program, and please return back to Europe as soon as you like, because I'm sure you get a very warm welcome. Finally, will you pick a track for us to go out on, Duane?
Boy, that's a toughie. I don't know. I guess, I don't know. Any particular type of thing?
I like the cut that guitar.
Let's do that, yeah. Let's do Because They're Young.
Thank you very much, Mr. Duane Eddy.